The crowd has taken their seats, and I'm about to say my first words and get everyone's attention. And I know that my next thing is We Dem Boys.
Right.
Let me jump back now to the cocktail mix that I prepared. And then we did their first dance. And that's a very interesting choice. Let me know when you're ready for it.
It's Thursday once again, at least it was when we did this recording, and it's time to talk to somebody about what they play, why they play it, and how it works for them here on Mobile Music Thursday, as we talk to mobile disc jockeys across the United States about the music they're playing, and most importantly, why they play what they play when they play it. Because, there's a lot of songs that can either, fail to do anything on the dance floor or be great depending on placement, what you had set up before, and where you're going after. I'm really excited about the guest that I have this week because he is the consummate expert when it comes to music. He worked in radio for many, many years as a music director, combing through songs, kind of determining what's going to be a hit, what's not going to be a hit, really becoming a musicologist and really making it a lifelong study. And of course, during that whole time, he's also been a mobile DJ. And now, putting all of his efforts into mobile DJing, he takes that same commitment to really understanding music, seeing kind of what's on the horizon, what's hot, and always having what people are going to be loving even before they know they're going to be loving it. Who am I talking about? None other than the very famous Perfect host, Jim Cerone. Jim, thanks for coming on Mobile Music Thursday.
Cheers, Jason. It's my pleasure. I love talking music anytime, anywhere.
Awesome. I always feel privileged. That I can have some of your time to come on the show to share with everybody out there some of your experience, because you of anybody have more depth of knowledge in music than anybody I know.
Well, it's something that I'm so passionate about, and the day I'm not is the day I should probably hang up my headphones, but I still get jazzed when new music comes in, when I hear a new song for the first time, when I discover a band or Shazam something in a restaurant and find out what the artist is. So to me, it's a lifelong thing, and it touches every part of my life. I listen to music from morning till night.
That's awesome. Had you ever imagined 10 years ago that you would be saying you Shazammed something in a restaurant?
No, it certainly has changed a lot. In fact, I ran into a friend in the grocery store. He and I were in radio together, and we were talking about how things have changed. And I said, I used to ask my clients when I was sitting down with them in my office to plan their wedding, what CDs do you have?
Right.
And after a while, you get that kind of blank stare from people, and you realize they don't own CDs anymore.
Right.
And then I started asking, well, what's on your iPod?
Uh-huh.
And that worked for a while. And then, what's on your phone? And now I ask, what's on your Pandora or Spotify playlist? Because people have gone from owning the music to not caring, to having the music and really getting into making playlists, to now they don't want to bother with it. They just want to let somebody else do the work. They don't want to have to worry about loading their phone. They want Pandora or Spotify to do it for them. So just how that has rapidly changed in 3 years' time is amazing.
Oh, it's incredible. It's incredible how fast, too. And when you think about just how long it took us to go from vinyl to cassettes to CDs, and then in the short amount of time of what you just described in a timeline was just in a matter of less than 5 years.
It's incredible, and it's constantly changing, so we have to stay on top of it. And it actually makes it harder now. You used to be able to listen to Casey Kasem, and you knew, well, if I have those 40 songs, I'm good.
Right.
Not anymore.
So how do you do it? How do you keep up? How do you keep up? Or
I have a ritual or a routine, and I have a reminder in my phone so that I sit down and do it every week. But I read Entertainment Weekly cover to cover, which is just a great magazine. I always have a copy right here. This is a Bible. Every DJ should get this, just to know about pop culture, to know this song came from this movie or this song was used in this TV commercial. They're also really far ahead. So if you want to know about a new album that's coming out or a song that may be hot or a collaboration, they report on who's in the studio with who. Entertainment Weekly is a great starting point. And then I just have these tabs open on my computer. It's the iTunes chart, and that's really interesting because that's not representative of radio play at all. It's what people are downloading and buying.
Right. It's like what the Billboard charts used to be.
The impact of that has changed where 2 years ago it was really impactful to now fewer people are buying and downloading songs. So I think it represents a smaller segment of the audience than it did 2 years ago. So I look at that, I look at the Billboard chart, I look at Shazam, I look at our 2 local radio stations, one top 40, one adult alternative, and then I just kind of make sure I have everything.
Wow, that's a pretty well-rounded approach, and then kind of looking for the next guide or the next place. There, I haven't found any directories, but I've heard that they're starting to track now in terms of streams, like how many times a song is streamed, and that is kind of being a new indicator of the degree of popularity of things.
I'm sure if you poked around, there's probably a Spotify chart that they publish that gives you an idea of what people are streaming, because that would be another indicator that's really important. The fun thing about Shazam or SoundHound or some of the other song samplings, Shazam in particular, I look all the way down to 100. I don't just look at the top 25 or the top 50. And Mr. Waves by Mr. Probes.
Okay.
That song was on Shazam. I knew about it 9 months before it ever hit the radio. Prayer in C, which is Robin Schultz, that song also popped on Shazam. Rather Be Like Clean Bandit. That was one of those ones I saw on Shazam. So if you want to be really far out and know way in advance what songs might make it, Shazam's chart is a great resource to look at.
Great. That's going to be a really good place to check out, especially as we look for different sources on the horizon to kind of get a barometer of what people are listening to and what people are excited about. And then there's a whole other question of what people want to dance to, because it could be a really popular song, but people don't necessarily want to dance to it. So that adds another layer of finding out like what is exciting, or it's a song that didn't chart that great, but people love to dance to it. So those kind of things. So what I want to do with you is I want to talk about one of your events, and I want to talk about like the decisions that you made and why you chose to do what you do in the context of a specific event. And so you had said you were going to pick out one of your recent events that you had done. Tell me about that a little bit.
It was a great wedding in October, and it's at one of our finest venues, the Indiana Roof Ballroom. The couple were very small town, both of them. And she leaned, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe them. He was a little country and she's a little bit rock and roll.
Okay.
Like, that's so trite and cliche. And then their venue is this very beautiful, elegant ballroom. So you have those dynamics all playing against each other. So he said, some of his favorite artists were Jason Aldean, Luke Bryan, Eric Church, real grassroots country. Mm-hmm. And then his other favorite type of music was rap.
Huh.
So you have her kind of top 40 sensibilities, his country and rap coupled together, and then this elegant facility. So in looking at my notes and in talking to them, trying to put all that together was real tricky. And making sure that the transitions, oftentimes either with our voice or with silence or a pause, or a bridge of one song that gets you from country to rap, you have to know what song you can use to kind of bridge that gap.
Sure.
But I knew it was going to be all about the transitions that night.
Yeah, there's only one Bellamy Brothers country rap, and then where do you go? Right?
Or I guess you could argue Florida Georgia Line.
Oh, true. Right.
With Nelly, sort of. There have been a couple in there. Cowboy Troy. Does anybody remember Cowboy Troy?
Cowboy Troy? No, I don't.
That was one of the first country rap type of things. And then I guess you could argue Kid Rock was sort of country rap, or Uncle Kracker when he first came out. Anyway.
Sure. They're so crossover that it's really hard to... it would be hard pressed for a diehard country fan to say they're all the way country,
Yeah. So this was a real interesting wedding to try to pull off. Here's I save everything. So this is their wedding program.
Okay. You can't pull it up. Show it under your chin where you're cropped out. The image is cropped out a little bit. There we go.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's perfect.
So that was their wedding program, and then I'll send you some pictures so that people can see what the Indiana Roof Ballroom looks like, because it's very grand, very large. They had 263 guests. So in our area, that's a pretty big wedding.
Yeah, that is.
So that kind of sets the scene for you. And then another feature for you to know is the wedding party comes in from the back of the room. Imagine a big oval, because that's what the Indiana Roof is. It's a big oval ballroom, beautiful kind of blonde wood dance floor.
Nice.
And the wedding party comes in from way back here. They're hit with a spotlight, and then they walk all the way to the front to the stage where I am.
Cool.
And one unique feature they offer is what's called a thunderstorm. So timing is critical. Now, we used My Kind of Party, which is a Jason Aldean song. And that was what I used for the wedding party. And I'm looking at my notes. The first song, however, that he threw in at the last minute was he wanted me to play for the ushers, who were the first ones in, We Dem Boys by Wiz Khalifa.
Okay.
Okay, so the crowd has taken their seats, and I'm about to say my first words and get everyone's attention. And I know that my next thing is We Dem Boys.
All right.
So you have to, with the pacing of your voice and the intensity of how you project, you've got to know what's next in your head and what your finger's going to do next, or your assistant, to make sure you make that transition. So the ushers come out to that. The wedding party comes out to then My Kind of Party, Jason Aldean, which has a nice, pretty loud guitar to start with. But then the Roof Ballroom does this really different feature. They will turn me down and all the lights off. So the maid of honor and the best man have just walked in. And now the lights all go out. And people are turning to each other going, what's happening?
What's going on? Right.
And very slowly you hear raindrops. And then you hear a rumble of thunder kind of back here. And with the light and sound that's already installed at this facility, they do a little mini 50-second thunderstorm. And the thunder rolls, and it comes in and builds and peaks, and the lightning is going off like this with the lights that they're doing. And even though you can only hear the rain, it's like you swear you can feel it.
Wow, that's great.
It's really neat. And then that thunderstorm finishes, and then I have to be ready, because instantly, as soon as they bring everything back up, I've got to say the bride and groom's name and hit their intro song, which was the Bulls theme.
Oh, fun.
So Sirius.
Sirius, yeah.
By the Alan Parsons Project.
Yeah, that's always exciting.
Now, the timing of that is critical, because the production crew is in the very back of the room. And I usually have a radio by me, and they say, okay, thunderstorm in 3, 2, 1. And then they'll say thunderstorm finishing in 3, 2, 1. Then I know it, because Sirius has that long instrumental intro, I had queued up to the first heavy downbeat, so that I knew I could capture that energy and say their names as they just came in. So timing, editing, transitions, vocal projection, all of that came into play in that first introduction.
Sure, you want it, I mean, you want it to feel like it's a continuation rather than like, oh, now I'm starting. Thank you, Thunder and Lightning people. Now I'll begin.
Right. You want it to be like a theater. You and Bill obviously had a lot of experience recently in production and staging.
Yes.
Congratulations, by the way, on your Mobile Beat success.
Thank you. It was an absolute blast. But I'll tell you what I tell everybody else: when you work with really amazing pros who are really committed to excellence, it's easy to look good.
But it was obvious that you guys had thought through all those details so that things just flowed.
I think that well, not to spend a lot of time on that, but it kind of speaks to what you're talking about too. The real work of it all was literally visioning it moment by moment. Like, then what do I want to see happen from the audience point of view? Then what do I want to see happen? You know, to go from the big picture to the minutia of like, when does the transition, what's happening on the video screens, and what are the lights doing, and what's happening in the room, and all that sort of thing. And then to actually then start figuring out how we're going to do it once all that's done. And that was an enormous amount of intellectual effort over and over again, because, you know, you miss so many times the first sweep through.
And
so,
it makes me laugh because everybody thinks putting on a trade show is easy or being a DJ is easy.
right.
And it's not.
Right. Well, it can be easy if it's done poorly. You know, if you just like show up and hook up your speakers, it doesn't take much to go hook up speakers, throw on whatever, play what you like, or maybe even, you know, even just like wait for requests and play them back. That, yeah, that is easy. But it also, you get the result that comes from easy. You know, when you really put the kind of time and attention and focus on it that you do, and others that we know do, then you're really getting something. You're getting something that's artistic. You're getting something that is professional. You're getting something that is an immersive experience that has a whole lot more value too.
I love how you said the results that come from being easy, from making it look easy. And that's a great way to encapsulate it. I mean, it just, so much thought goes into behind the scenes. And let me jump back now to the cocktail mix that I prepared.
Okay, cocktail mix. So did you introduce them and then play the cocktail mix?
Well, that's why I'm saying the cocktail hour had already been outside in the lobby.
Oh, okay.
And so the guests experienced this first, which kind of helped. And to me, cocktail hour should never overwhelm the conversation. The volume should be just swimming in the background so you can barely recognize the song. Oh, I know that. And then you can kind of hear it in your head.
Sure.
So volume is something I'm really conscious of. And so for cocktail hour, I try to pick really bouncy, up-tempo, positive music that I know is going to just kind of be that extra touch of atmosphere.
Do you do the same stuff for every event, or you do a custom list for every event?
I do a custom list, and you'll kind of see that as I go through here. I think it's really fun for me to hear how music comes in and out of fashion. And whenever I'm at a grocery store, at a restaurant, anywhere that has overhead music, I'm always listening for what song is perfect for that moment, for that age group, for that time period. And it's funny because sometimes the music is totally wrong. There are some banquet facilities that have Muzak, M-U-Z-A-K, just that general Muzak that plays in the background. And I always kindly ask them if they would please turn it off.
Right.
Because it cracks me up, because there'll be breakup songs playing.
Yeah, right.
During cocktail hour, totally inappropriate, not lyrics or foul language, but there's all, you know, there'll be 3 songs in a row about breakups or heartache.
I just died in your arms tonight, you know.
Yeah, it just doesn't fit. That's a great example of the wrong song to be playing. So I listen for songs that I can freshen up my cocktail playlist with. And so I have a kind of a loose template that I start with, and then I customize it for every single wedding. So here's what, let me just run down a bunch.
Okay.
Knowing a very elegant facility. She's kind of a top 40 girl. Her parents are mid 50-year-olds, and then he likes country. So Come Fly With Me, Frank Sinatra, as the first guests were walking in. Brighter Than the Sun, Colby Calais. And then Night Train, Jason Aldean. So you have a standard or a pop crooner, Sinatra, that's really up-tempo and about flying, and you know, then this really happy, cheery Colby Calais song, which has a nice acoustic guitar sound, and then that leads me into, so that the Jason Aldean doesn't so out of place. If you put the Sinatra and the Jason Aldean back to back, that's a pretty jarring transition.
Well, and the Colby Calais is, I mean, that's a really upbeat, feel-good song. It's got really good rhythms, but it doesn't have a lot of heavy percussion. But the rhythms are really bright and energetic and things like that. So that makes for a really nice nice build and nice transition.
And that's why I like her, a number of her songs. I Do, Fallen For You. Bubbly is a good dinner time song because the energy's a little lower on that one. But she's a very inoffensive artist. I think Taylor Swift is very polarizing. I think anytime you play Taylor Swift, you're taking a chance that some of the audience is going to hate her, some of the audience is going to love her. Colby Calais is kind of right down the middle.
Now, do you say that in the context of your dinner music and cocktail music playlist, or in the context of dancing, or all three?
I guess kind of just in general. You have to be aware that some artists are polarizing. And that is a very much a timing issue. It could be that they're just on the tail end of 3 or 4 hits that have been on the radio nonstop for a year, and people are totally burned out on them. But then 6 months later, you can start sneaking those back in. Having a Party, Sam Cooke. I'm a huge Sam Cooke fan. I think he's a genius, forgotten artist. So anytime I can kind of slide a soul song from him in, and then that was also made a hit by Rod Stewart. So people know the tune, and that's what I'm always looking for with cocktail music, is familiar songs that people know the melody to.
Kind of like comfort
Here for a
food
Good
in
Time,
music.
George Strait, which is just a great feel-good song, medium tempo, might not work on the dance floor, but is perfect here. Cheek to Cheek, Ella Fitzgerald, Springsteen by Eric Church, Uptown Girl, Billy Joel, Baby Love, Diana Ross and the Supremes, Sunshine and Whiskey by an artist named Frankie Ballard, who's fairly new on the country scene. She's in Love with the Boy, Trisha Yearwood. If somebody says they like country, it's good to ask, when did you graduate school? When did you start listening to country? And do your parents like country?
Why is that?
Well, because there's a lot of classic country music, and by classic, I mean in the mid to late 80s, country had a real resurgence. That was led by Garth Brooks and George Strait, and there was kind of a whole new age of country. And some of those songs from the late 80s, early 90s are now country classics.
Oh, yeah.
Something like She's in Love with the Boy, Trisha Yearwood, which is, I love the way you describe the Colby Calais song. It's up-tempo, it's happy, it's got a great storyline to it, so that's why I slipped it in there. And then on with the list, The Way You Do the Things You Do, The Temptations, Stuck Like Glue, Sugarland, Moondance, Van Morrison, All-American Girl, Carrie Underwood, For Once in My Life, Michael Bublé. And that was right about the time that the guests began to walk in from the lounge into the ballroom.
It's from the list that you're giving me, it sounds like all of these float right around it, and I want to see if this is like by design. Probably is, but it sounds like they all float around like 105 beats per minute up to probably a max of 115 beats per minute.
I'm looking at the BPMs, and you're right. The Jason Aldean is about 80. The Colby Calais is 96. Yeah, you want music that's not frantic during cocktail hour. We were somewhere, and there was jazz playing, and it wasn't smooth jazz. It was true jazz, like John Coltrane, Cannonball Adderley, Miles Davis type of jazz. Very experimental, very dark-sounding, minor chords, and they were playing very fast. And that just... It hurts your ears. It's very discordant and kind of makes you uncomfortable.
It's intentionally jarring.
Right. And so that's why I try to stay away from anything too frantic during cocktails, especially during dinner.
Well, I think that's a good caution with jazz, too. I think that, you know, a lot of DJs starting out, I know I did in my early years, where I'm like, oh, good, a jazz CD, I'll throw this on. Like, any jazz is jazz, like all jazz is jazz, where jazz is kind of like saying pop. You know what I mean? There's such a range in pop music that it's, you know, that, right, so.
Well, learning from people like you and Bill Herman and Randy Bartlett and Peter Mary, Mark Farrell, always asking one more question of your clients is so important, especially when it comes to music. And jazz is one of those. When somebody says jazz, I always try to ask, and what are your favorite artists? Because if they say Sinatra and Bublé, then I know that they're using jazz to describe what I would say is soft rock or crooners or Rat Pack type music. Sure. So people use the umbrella of jazz, and you have to be really careful of that.
Yeah, or even standards. So understanding that you're making sure that you are speaking the same language. It's you can easily get yourself in trouble to just assume that, oh, what they think is what you're also thinking.
Yeah.
Can we jump ahead to the dance?
Sure.
So you've played, did you do the spotlight dances like right before the open dancing started?
Yeah, what we frequently do here is introductions and then the meal. In this case, we had the welcome and the blessing. They had a very ornate cake. So the cake was cut before dinner so the caterer could then take it back and serve it as dessert. So we had the plated meal for 263 toasts. and then we did their first dance. And that's a very interesting choice. Let me know when you're ready for it.
Okay, I am ready.
Okay. Here's this country boy from a small town in Indiana and her, and he was born in '84. She was born in '89, so he's a little bit older. But their first dance took me completely by surprise. Every Time I Close My Eyes by Babyface and Kenny G.
Weird. Was that their parents' influence? Where did that come from? Like,
I don't
what
know
even
where
made them
that
think to
came from.
dig that up?
And they wanted specifically not just the Babyface, but they wanted the Babyface
With
with Kenny G
Kenny G.
duet. And they also asked me if I would edit it. I said, now that's about 4 minutes and 45 seconds because I have this encyclopedia in my head. I remember intro times and lengths and how a song ends. And I knew that that's a pretty long song, so they had me shorten it. But yeah, that was their first dance.
So did you have them explain themselves?
Well, I asked them about it, and they were kind of coy. They didn't really tell me, so I don't know where it came from or why they picked it.
Wow. Okay. Well, sometimes you get to know, sometimes you don't. But that's a mystery.
Yeah.
Okay. So you get done now. You get down to the point. You're at the point where the spotlight dances are done. Now you're about to begin open dancing and build some energy. So how do you start that off with this particular group?
Any group, you have to do your homework. I ask, where are people coming from? What are their ages relative to yours? Is it 70% your age, 30% your parents and aunts and uncles? That helps me know the generations in advance. And then I kind of break the music up into hours. I know the first hour is going to be very popular, music for everybody, maybe a few more slow songs. The second hour, some of the older folks are saying their goodnights. The third hour is the diehards and your real party people. So I kind of think in those segments.
I love how you have an overall game plan for every event, like kind of understanding your segments of the night that you're gonna. You have a lot of latitude to move around in that space, but it still gives you a structure to work in.
In radio, we called it day parting. There were certain songs that you played in morning drive. There were other songs you could get away with in middays during times when people were in the office, in afternoons and evenings, because you have a different audience. And to me, that really applies to those 3 hours. We often have 3 hours here. So the first hour is everybody. You're trying to please all generations. You should stay really familiar. You definitely want to have a mix of a slow song, maybe every fourth or fifth song, something like that based on the crowd. Then the second hour, then the third hour. So yeah, it does help me have a structure, and that helps you kind of know, okay, this would be a great first hour song. This would be a good second hour song. And then you, on the fly, may totally change things up, but at least you have a starting point.
Sure. So let's talk about that first hour and how you start trying to, because anytime anybody says, I want to try to please everybody, you start to go, whoa, I don't know if you want to try to please everybody. But in a way, that's kind of a tall order that we always have when we go into these.
It is. And it's very difficult, but it's not impossible. And that's where planning as much as you can. And I ask them for hot button songs throughout the planning process for 3 months out, 1 month out, a couple weeks before the wedding. I'm trying to help them think of those really important songs for them and their friends from high school. What did you road trip to? You took rides out in the country, or you remember a spring break trip. What are those songs? When you were in college, what bar did you hang out in? What songs did the bar play? Your friends from your first couple years out of college in your first apartment, so that you have those all kind of in your hip pocket and you're ready. And then I ask for aunts and uncles. And when a bride tells me, as she did yesterday, I had an appointment yesterday, and she said, my mom is one of 9 and all my aunts will be there. I immediately said, okay, what is it that will light them up? Is it ABBA Dancing Queen? Is it Love Shack? You know, tell me what songs are going to work for that group, because I know if I get them out, then I've won.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. Because to get them out as a group on the dance floor and get some energy going, that's really smart. So looking at your looking at that first hour, what was your first 3 songs that you led off with open dancing?
And I hate to use the word always because I try not to always do anything. But there are some songs and some sets that almost always work. Unchained Melody by the Righteous Brothers, to me, is about the ideal dance floor opener. It's getting kind of old now. It was great when it was reused in the movie Ghost because it reintroduced it to a whole nother generation.
Right, I remember that.
But it's getting to that point where it may be too old for a 22-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
But that Can't Help Falling in Love, Elvis, At Last, Etta James, What a Wonderful World, Louis Armstrong. Those are songs you can pretty much count on to get everybody out there as a first song. And sometimes my clients will say, we want a fast song. We want to finish the spotlight dances, and then we want to kick the party off. And I say, well, think of driving a car. You can't go from first gear to fifth because the car's going to stall. And if I try to do that at a party, your guests have just had a wonderful meal. They're sitting and digesting their food. They've watched your spotlight dances. They're having their cake and their coffee. I've tried. Most of the time, it's very unsuccessful if I try to throw a fast song on right away after the spotlights. I said it, but if you'll give me just 3 songs, I can go slow, medium, fast, and then we're into fifth gear and we're on the highway at 55.
So like kind of easing them into that.
Yeah. So I think a slow song to open is the best idea. Doesn't always work. Every crowd, if you can feel the temperature in the room, and that's why I never sit down. When I'm at a wedding, I stand, I walk the room the entire night because I'm feeling the vibe of people. And if I can see people literally drumming on the table and they can't wait to get up, then maybe I'm going to skip that first slow song and go into a medium and then a fast. My Girl, The Temptations is a great second song because it's sunny, it's happy, it's medium tempo. And then something like Respect, or if you feel like you can go directly into something newer, Party Rock Anthem, Dynamite, Tayo Cruz. It's tricky now because we're so splintered. We don't all watch the same TV stations or the same shows. And so songs take much longer to reach grandma and that generation. Mm-hmm. So you have to be really cautious with playing something newer. And I know Party Rock Anthem's not new, but it is to some people in the audience.
Well, probably the only exception that I could pop off in the top of my head would be Pharrell Williams with Happy, which seemed to like just jettison across all of the generations.
That's a great example. And that song worked great for a while. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of reached its peak where people were tired of it. Right about now, it might be a one that you could bring back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it burned, but it's kind of funny thing is it's bland enough that it may have a lot more longevity for us than.
And it's
than
one
songs.
that you don't have to play the whole thing. You could play a minute and a half of, and if you see people getting bored, you can mix out. But it's a great bridge to get you from maybe the first set of slower music into faster music and then take it from there.
It really is. Gosh, Jim, I tell you what, we went overtime in the show and I'm like, there's no good time to stop this conversation. There really just isn't. This is so fantastic and so insightful, and there's just everything you sharing, how you do what you do and why you do what you do and how thoughtful it is so valuable. I'd encourage anybody who's watched this to go back and now watch it again and make some notes. So this is what I want to do. I want you to bookmark this part of the night in your head or make a note or whatever it is you do. I'm going to do the same thing. And then I want to record another episode where we pick up and then we go through the dance portion. Because everything that you talked about in the beginning, it was like also important, also valuable, also really great. And now I want to go through those 3 phases, that structure of those 3 periods throughout the night. And through this particular event, just like really look at and analyze how you did what you did and why you did what you did. Because it's all been, I've DJ'd for like 24 years now, and I'm learning new things just talking to you right now. So is that a deal? Can we do that?
It's a deal. You got it.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim. My guest, Jim Cerone, the perfect host. You can find him on Facebook, find him online, and a musicologist. Well, you've been listening to him half hour. You know how amazing he is. I don't have to tell you, right? So we'll talk to you another week on Mobile Music Thursday. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Thanks, Jason.